If you've never heard a propeller aircraft banking overhead in the dark, you've never known real dread. The AC-47 Spooky was American ingenuity at its absolute finest. Today, we show you exactly why opposing forces in Vietnam prayed it would pass them by. In 1964, the United States Air Force looked at an aircraft that had already won one war and decided it could win another. The Douglas C-47 Skytrain had been hauling cargo and dropping paratroopers since the early days of World War II. It was slow, propeller-driven, and by the standards of the jet age, completely obsolete. America turned it into the most feared thing in the night sky over Southeast Asia. The idea began at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, under Captain John C. Simons, Project Tailchaser, 1964. The concept was brutally simple. If a pilot flies a tight left-handed circle around a fixed point on the ground, guns mounted on the left side of the aircraft stay locked on that point continuously. No strafing runs, no attacking and breaking off. Just sustained, unrelenting fire for as long as fuel and ammunition held out. Captain Ron W. Terry took that concept and built the weapon. Under Project Gunship, he flew a team to Bien Hoa Air Base, South Vietnam, arriving on the 2nd of December, 1964. The first converted aircraft was ready by the 11th. The enemies of the United States had 11 days before everything changed. They called it the FC-47 at first. Fighter pilots objected to a cargo plane carrying a fighter designation, so the Air Force changed the F to an A for attack. The aircraft became the AC-47D. 53 aircraft were eventually converted. 41 of them served in Vietnam. General Electric GAU-2A miniguns, 6-barrel rotary weapons mounted on the left side of the aircraft, firing downward through the rear windows and the cargo door. Each gun could fire up to 6,000 rounds per minute. 3 guns together, 18,000 rounds per minute at maximum rate. Missions typically loaded around 24,000 rounds. Tracer rounds lit the sky bright red. The ratio was 1 tracer for every 4 standard rounds. What witnesses saw from the ground was 1/5 of what was actually coming down. The pilot aimed with a gun sight originally designed for the Douglas A-1 Skyraider, a simple optical sight, a surplus piece of equipment mounted on the left window. He flew a pylon turn at 120 knots, 3,000 feet above the target. He pressed the firing button on the control column. The guns did the rest. Here's the arithmetic the enemy never had a counter for. In under 10 seconds, the AC-47 could place at least 1 round into every square yard of a standard football field. Not one burst, continuous, sustained. The aircraft could stay on station for hours. There was no disengaging, no window to regroup, no interval between passes where a commander could rally his men and push forward. The Spooky just kept circling, and it kept firing. The enemy's entire tactical doctrine in Vietnam depended on the dark. Move at night, attack under cover. Use the jungle and the black hours to neutralize American firepower advantages. The AC-47 extinguished that doctrine, literally. Illumination flares dropped from the aircraft turned the terrain below into daylight. Whatever was moving in the dark stopped being invisible. Whatever was attacking stopped having the initiative. Ground commanders across Vietnam learned one thing quickly. When a fire base was under pressure after dark, the first call was to Spooky. Not artillery, not helicopter gunships. Spooky first. The United States flew those aircraft for 5 years over Vietnam and Laos. By the time the last American AC-47 flew its final combat mission, the 1st of December 1969, the 53 aircraft of the program had collectively flown in excess of 150,000 combat missions. They had defended 3,926 hamlets and outposts. They had expended approximately 97 million rounds of 7.62 millimeter ammunition and 270,000 flares. The official record stands uncontested. No village, hamlet, or outpost under Spooky protection was ever overrun. Not one. In 5 years of continuous combat operations, not one. The enemy understood what was coming for them. Captured Viet Cong documents contained explicit orders. Do not engage the aircraft. The specific language recovered in primary sources is direct. Weapons are useless against the Dragon. It will only be angered. Ground commanders on the American side reported one consistent pattern everywhere Spooky operated. The enemy withdrew. They did not adapt. They did not develop a counter-tactic. They withdrew. The psychological weight of 18,000 rounds per minute coming out of the dark above you, from an aircraft you cannot see until the tracers begin, was something no order from a political officer could overcome. If you're proud of what American airmen accomplished, hit subscribe right now. More stories of American courage and ingenuity drop every week. Don't miss a single one. Now consider what it took to put those aircraft over a besieged outpost at 2 in the morning. The crew of an AC-47 was 7 men: a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, loadmaster, 2 armament specialists, and a South Vietnamese observer responsible for communicating with troops on the ground. There was no armor protecting any of them. The aircraft was slow, loud, and flew in a predictable circle. Every enemy soldier within range knew exactly where it was going to be in 4 seconds. Every man on that crew knew it too. They flew the circle anyway, on every single mission. The aircraft drew heavy ground fire on every single operation. The records show it without ambiguity. Spooky 70 took concentrated fire from North Vietnamese positions at the A Shao Special Forces Camp in March of 1966. Both engines were struck and knocked out, and the crew brought a bullet-riddled airframe down in a crash landing on a mountain. The aircraft was destroyed. The crew survived. On the night of February 28, 1968, Spooky 71 was hit by a Viet Cong mortar over Nha Trang. The blast tore through the right wing and sent shrapnel through the fuselage, wounding 5 of the crew, 2 of them seriously. Among the wounded was Airman First Class John Levito, a loadmaster. He had been preparing to throw a live illumination flare out of the aircraft when the mortar hit. The blast threw him across the cargo bay. The armed flare, already igniting, landed on the floor of the aircraft among the remaining ordnance. Levito, unable to stand and bleeding from over 40 shrapnel wounds, dragged himself across the floor, grabbed the flare, and threw it out of the aircraft just before it reached full ignition. Every man aboard lived. The aircraft's wings and fuselage were later found to contain over 3,500 shrapnel holes. Levito received the honor from President Nixon on Armed Forces Day, May 14, 1970. 19 aircraft were lost to all causes across the entire program. 12 were confirmed in combat. The men who flew them volunteered repeatedly for spooky assignments, not because the odds were comfortable, but because the belief in the mission was absolute. You do not volunteer again for something you consider merely a job. You volunteer again because you know that without you, the men on the ground below do not make it to morning. What the AC-47 built is still flying. The concept proved by Project Gunship became Project Gunship 2, and out of it came the AC-130 Spectre, the aircraft that carried American gunship doctrine into Grenada, Panama, Somalia, the Persian Gulf, Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. That lineage runs directly to the aircraft operating today. The AC-130J Ghost Rider achieved initial operational capability on the 30th of September, 2017. Manufactured by Lockheed Martin and converted by Boeing, it carries a trainable 30mm cannon and a 105mm howitzer. It employs precision-guided munitions, including small-diameter bombs, Hellfire missiles, and Griffin missiles, launched from wing pylons and common launch tubes. Its electro-optical and infrared sensors operate in conditions the crews of the AC-47 could not have imagined. In early January 2026, 2 Ghost Riders arrived at RAF Mildenhall in the United Kingdom, forward deployed, armed, and ready on short notice for whatever came next. The AC-47 itself is preserved at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, with free admission. A propeller aircraft from the era of World War II is on permanent display 60 years after it changed how America fights in the dark. In December of 1964, 2 converted cargo planes landed at Bien Hoa with a small team of airmen, a set of mounting brackets, and an idea the fighter community had already dismissed. 11 days later, it was firing at 18,000 rounds per minute. 5 years later, not one position it guarded had ever been overrun. The men who flew it did so without armor, without speed, without altitude, flying a slow left-hand circle 3,000 feet above the Americans, depending on them to hold the line. The Dragon did not breathe fire. It was American airmen doing their jobs in the dark, so that other Americans could survive until morning. These are the stories every proud American deserves to know. Subscribe and ring that bell so history like this never gets forgotten. Share this with a veteran who earned the right to feel proud.